Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. This is Brian, a.k.a. The Kickin' Chicken, coming to you from Shooter's Billiards in Southington, Connecticut, one of the very best ever old-school style pool rooms. Come by and have some fun. I want to start by offering a big thank you once again to Shooter's room owner, Sal Conti, for hosting this, as well as his continued shared interest in preserving some of pool's very interesting and colorful history with these storyteller series of interviews. Today's guest is certainly one of the particularly colorful characters in the pool landscape, and it's my pleasure to welcome him, Mr. Bruce Difronzo. How are you doing today, Bruce?
I'm good, Chicken. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
You're always good.
Yeah, I try to be. I try. So if you would, please tell us where you're from, a little bit about your early years, and what was your first exposure to pool?
Well, I hail from Kensington, Connecticut. And I was exposed to pool at a very young age because my grandfather loved the game. And he had a pool table in his cellar that I'd go over there and hit balls once in a while. And my father had a bowling league on Tuesday nights, and I used to go there with him. And they had a little bar table there. It was 25 cents to play. And I used to go and bug all of his friends for quarters so I could play on the table.
Starting to get addicted, right?
Yeah.
It's fun, yeah.
Especially if I lost a tooth or something. You know, I'd come in and show everybody the tooth. They start coughing money up. I can go play pool.
See how many games you could turn it into, right?
Yeah.
Well, for anybody watching from other parts of the country, pretty common thing here in the New England area to have basements, first of all, and a lot of us had pool tables or knew somebody who had a pool table. Like you said, your grandpa had one. And bowling alleys, it was kind of a very common thing that they would have pool tables there as well.
My grandparents ended up moving to another town, and they had to get rid of the table.
Yeah.
I ended up with the table. It took me a whole summer. I refinished it, put a new cloth on it, finally got ready to play the night before ninth grade. Well, long story short, I never did one night of homework. In ninth grade, all I did was play pool.
You were less studious with your schoolwork,
yeah,
and more so with the pool table.
I cared more about pool.
So fast forward just a tiny bit, you pretty much had a job most of your adult life, right? If not all.
Well, I started my business when I was 18.
Okay.
You know, as an excavating contractor, repair contractor. And I love working. That's who I am.
Yeah.
Pool was a passion of mine when I was younger. And thank God I kept my job. I had enough sense to keep my job. I could never afford to live on a pool player's salary.
Yeah. Well, you had the best of both worlds. You're making pretty decent money, obviously, or really good money at your contracting work, but that allowed you to get out there and have some fun mixing it up with pool,
did.
Right?
Absolutely.
I know firsthand from both observing while you played other people and even playing you some myself, you may well be the most competitive person I know, and you pull it off in a remarkably humble and low-key manner. Well, that's kind of a joke, right?
No, I wasn't feeling your sarcasm.
All kidding aside, whether it's a big bet or even $10, what do you think makes you so competitive?
I hate losing. Period. End of the story.
That came out.
I don't care if it's for a penny or for $1,000 or whatever. I hate losing.
Well, I can attest that this is very accurate. Correct answer. It's no secret that you hold Larry Lascotti in very high regard, not just for his magnificent game, but as a dear friend and an amazing character. Would it be accurate to say that Larry was a mentor for you in pool?
Larry, when I met Larry, it was like 1990, 91. I had already kind of thrown a towel in as far as my competitive pool playing goes. Like, you know, every night after work, I'd go take a shower and we'd go wherever the action was. And if there was no room with any action, we'd go somewhere and we'd create the action. So it was like, you know, every night I was out playing pool.
You knew how to make a little excitement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have anyone else that you considered pool mentors?
Yeah, well, Bobby, of course.
Talking about Bobby Hunt.
Yeah, Bobby was. I've known Bobby since the summer of '81, and we met right here in Southington. I was in here one day, and he came in with his wife and Paul Dobratz. I had never laid eyes on him before. I had no idea who he was. I didn't know who the good pool players were around Connecticut because I had only played in Reenie's in New Britain, and then this place opened up in '76. So of course, it's a 10-minute ride. I'm going to come out here. So I had been playing a lot out here in Southington, and Bobby showed up, and we ended up playing. I had no idea who he was. We played for 6 hours, and we broke even for $10 a rack. I played really good, and he played really good. Neither one of us really missed much of anything. So after that session, Bobby looked at me and he said, "You feel like playing tomorrow?" I said, "Hell yeah." So he came back the next day and absolutely handed me my ass, if I can say that. I didn't have a chance. And it was, talk about a humbling experience. This guy didn't miss a ball. He was hitting balls banking balls off of rails into other balls, carrying them off into pockets, playing combinations. The combos were that far apart, making every single one he looked at. I mean, it was just like unbelievable.
Well, what were you playing? A 9-ball?
Yeah, we were playing 9-ball.
Okay.
$10 a rack.
Nice.
I forget how much I lost that day, but it probably beat me for 100 or 150 or whatever.
So you ended up becoming good friends with him.
We ended up becoming real good friends. And after that beating he gave me, I chased Bobby around for 6 months playing him because I never seen anybody play pool like that before. The guy was just, to this day, he was playing so good, he wouldn't miss a ball.
He had a different high gear.
That's what I was chasing. I'm playing this guy who doesn't miss, so you put that into perspective, you're over a shot. I don't care how easy or how hard it is. If you miss, guess what? You're not getting back to the table. And that's how good he played. So I chased him for 6 months until one day we were in Crown Billiards in New London. And, we had become pretty good friends. It didn't take long. And I says, "Come on, let's play for a pizza." He says, "Okay." I beat him for the pizza. I finally beat him a set for a lousy pizza, and it was the best win I could even imagine.
The pizza tasted especially good. But how smart is he? When he decides to lose, it's for a pizza.
Yeah, right?
Right?
Well, with me and Bobby, we didn't play for a lot of money anyways.
Yeah.
It was like, I knew he was better than me then, and I just wanted to learn how to play, and we ended up becoming good friends.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a little bit of mentorship as well.
Absolutely.
So you guys ended up, ultimately, you went on a couple of road trips, right?
Yeah, we'd take a ride down to North Carolina, to players' room down there in Greensboro.
How'd that go?
Ton of action. The first night we showed up there, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30. It's a 12-hour ride. So we weren't going to go to the room because there was action there all night long. So I says, "Come on, let's just go to the room." Well, we left there the next morning after the sun came up. There was action. Every table in the room was going. It was unbelievable. For me, heaven on earth. These guys were gambling money I had never seen before. I seen a guy walk in off the road. There was a bar table out by the front desk, and I watched the guy lose $6,800 in like 45 minutes. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. The guy couldn't make a ball. If the ball was sitting in front of the side hole, He couldn't make it. And he's playing a guy who was running out from everywhere. And he's sending his guy out for more money. I'm like...
They had more cash than talent, right? Well, Bobby said that a lot of times when the tobacco, I don't know if they call it tobacco harvest, but whenever they were bringing in the tobacco, people were coming from all over the country to be there because the guys were gambling big.
Yeah.
Yeah, down the
Carolinas. They were. Yeah. There was a lot of good players. Hopkins was there that night, and David Howard, and there was a bunch of other guys. I can't even remember their names at this point. Yeah. A lot of champions were in the room that night. Because I guess they had a tournament going on.
They flocked to where the money was, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what about your friend Kenny Wellman? Did you meet him before or after Bobby?
Kenny came after Bobby. Not that much longer after I met Bobby. I was in a room once again, and all of a sudden I look up and there's this guy standing in the door, and I never seen him before. And Kenny's an odd-looking guy. He doesn't look like he's slick by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. He was a guy you couldn't tell a book by its cover, for sure. And he ended up being like, we ended up playing that day, and he ended up beating me. But the guy was amazing. He really had no stroke. And he was unorthodox, the way he held the cue, and everything about him was just, he looked like a person who was out of sync, to put it at best. His lips were moving, he was like nibbling, it looked like he was nibbling while he was playing, and his head was bobbling, and he had this bandana.
Everything about him looked wrong, but he didn't miss.
Everything about him looked like, this guy's a sucker.
Yeah.
And guess what? He just kept finishing the rack. Rack after rack, he just kept completing the rack.
It was like the secret weapon to take around, right?
He ended up being a secret weapon because we ended up becoming very good friends. And I got to tell you something. Me and Kenny won a lot of money. Me and him would go wherever it was. He would always be the main player. And we always got a game because of the way he looked and the way he talked and the way, we could always get a game. And like I was telling you before, I mean, 80% of the time, Kenny would win. And if he didn't win, well, I was the B player. But after watching him play for 3-4 hours, I was just like always dying to play.
Yeah.
Like every time that he couldn't play, I would get up and beat the guy.
So you had a nice teamwork thing.
We had a really good teamwork.
Yeah. Well, they said a lot of people described him. You were talking about the way his mouth and teeth.
Nibbling.
He would actually grind his teeth. You could hear him sometimes grinding his teeth.
He did a lot of weird things.
Yeah. Now, what about our friend Tommy Seminaro Jr.? Did you meet him after Kenny?
I'm trying to think what the date was back then when Players' Choice opened up in New Haven. I'm thinking it was early 90s. And Tommy would come in with Mike Abbott.
Oh, yeah.
And they were young kids.
Yep.
And, I was playing good back then. And, I would play the kids a little bit. I'd give them like the 6 or the 7 ball, But they were young.
Yeah, there's a group of them, right? There's Robbie Sayers. There was some of the guys coming down from New York.
Ginky
right?
Ginky would come in from New York.
Yeah.
There was a nice little pool room.
Players' Choice.
Yeah, we had good action. We had guys that had money that would come down there and gamble. It was good. It was good for me. It was only a 30-minute ride.
Now, tell me about some of your times over at the Milford Rec. Would that be what you considered your favorite action spot?
Well, that was the best action spot when I first started playing. Bobby showed me that room. That's where he would play all the time.
Yeah.
We had these old guys, Paulie LaCarey. He was in his 70s at the time, and they were all older guys. Bo was like 80, over 85, going into his 90s.
Yep.
But those guys gambled thousands.
Jimmy Sure Shot, right? He was in there?
Jimmy Sure Shot, yeah. There's a guy who'd walk in the room, he'd have $40,000 in his pocket.
Yeah.
And then, there was Art Barberi would walk in the door. His
Another
father,
big
owned
actor.
half of New Haven. The guy, he always had $20,000, $30,000 in his pocket.
Yeah.
He'd lose $1,500, $2,000 in a blink of an eye. He didn't care.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Art was he could lose that much money, and you wouldn't know it. It didn't mean anything to him. But he loved to gamble, and we loved taking his money.
Tell me about a time when you guys, I think it was Bobby, yourself, Tommy, and maybe Kenny also. You guys went into, I don't know if it was actually in one of the boroughs of New York or if it was Westchester area, but you ran into a guy named Flipper. Why don't you tell me about that?
You got to bring that story up, huh?
Well, let me hear.
I almost jumped out of the car on the highway on the way home.
Well, what happened? Tell us.
We made a game with this guy called Flipper. He's got little arms. I mean, they were like flippers. Honest to God, if the upper arm was this big and the lower arm was this big, and he had these. They were like flippers. There's no way he could get his hands in his pockets. He'd put his pockets up here somewhere. But the guy, Kenny makes a game with him playing one pocket on a real tight table.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about the whole story was Kenny could have beat the guy. He could have beat him. I mean, Kenny was a champion.
Well, are you saying he lost to the guy with no arms?
Oh, he lost to the guy with no arms. The best part about it is I'll get to after, but there was a girl that was sitting there watching the match.
Uh-huh.
And all Kenny could think about was impressing this girl.
Oh, okay.
So he had his beer going, Heineken. He always had the Heineken going. He's walking around the table with his beer going like this, and his head bobbling and the nibbling and the bandana.
And she was probably Flipper's
and the
old
long
lady.
and the long hair. And but anyways, yeah, Kenny he made an ass out of himself. Basically, got way too drunk, and we ended up losing. Now, I thought that me and Kenny were going partners on the game,
Uh-oh.
but on the ride home, come to find out, I was the backer. We got in such an argument about it on the way home, and Bobby just kept throwing gas on the fire all the way home to the point I was ready to jump right out the door on the highway.
You thought you were the partner, but you were the.
I was the backer.
You were the stake horse all the way.
Yeah, I didn't know it, but I ended up paying.
But look at what a beautiful story it is all these years later.
Oh yeah.
I did a little bit of investigation for Bobby about this guy, and I found out that he was actually a guy that worked at one of the airports. I'm not sure if it was LaGuardia or Newark, and I remember thinking to myself, probably not a baggage handler, but
yeah, right.
But he did. He worked at one of those airports.
You had to sneak that in there, didn't
Well, I
you?
did kind of. Yeah. makes logical sense, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. Tell me what you know about Chicago billiards and
Chicago.
that's in West Haven for anybody that's not from this area. That was a great gambling place too, right?
Yeah, it didn't last long enough.
Yeah.
It was good for a few years while it lasted. We had Ralph the baker, who had more money than God, who would just, he would have guys like Jeremy and, who was the other guy we were just talking about?
Well, Tommy was there an awful lot, I know.
Well, Tommy was there an awful lot, but who was the other guy? This is my old age kicking in now. We were just talking about him. He doesn't play like he used to. He said he was nuts. Come on, we were just talking about it.
Not Kenny.
No.
What am I losing here?
I don't know, but it's not coming to me, so we may
Roll
have
the
to.
tape back. We'll
We have to cut this section out.
Just edit.
No, the guy, the heck was his name? I can't think of it.
That we were just talking about.
I don't know if you know who he was either.
Hold on.
He was Ralph's number one guy, But anyways, Ralph would put these guys in action.
Altamari?
Yeah. Chucky Altamar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he would just say, go ahead and play.
Yeah.
And he'd put the money up.
Oh, yeah, y'all sponsor tournaments all the time.
And he was just,
Two-man
he ended
tournaments,
up giving the
whatever.
money to the guys. That's what it was. Because he loved pool so much.
Yeah.
So, he'd put $1,500 up and say, go ahead, play for it. And they'd chop it up, Well, that was part of it. And then you had Carmen, who was the card player, and Paulie LeCarey would come in from Milford, and I'd go down there and play him a little one pocket back then. I mean, it was a good room. It had action. Hopkins showed up a couple of times. It was just, it was a good room for a few years.
I know Neptune Joe Frady, he lived
Oh,
there.
Neptune Joe was there quite a bit. Yeah, Larry
For a
lived
year,
Larry lived on a futon in the back room for a few months.
There was the story about how he won Chucky Altamari had just bought an air mattress so that he could sleep there.
Right.
And Larry won it from him
Yeah.
in a game. Larry was sleeping on it, and he woke up in the morning, and it was flat.
Yeah.
There was a knife buried in it to the hilt, and everybody kind of figured it must have been Chucky that did that.
Of course it was Chucky.
Angry that he lost it playing. So you're up at Capitol Billiards in Middletown. Is that a good room?
Capitol Billiards was not a great pool room for action. but it was a pool room that was in close enough proximity, and it had the old style. It was an old style pool room.
Yeah.
It actually had wooden bleachers. You know, you sit on them for a half an hour, you get a sore ass.
Yeah.
You know, them deals. But me and my buddy Rich Conley, who I met at Rainey's in New Britain, he was a good player. Me and him played about the same speed. And we ended up at Capitol Billiards one day, and sure enough, there was this, the guy ended up being a drug dealer, and he was a player, and he wanted to play. So Rich started playing him, and they were playing for like $30 a game, 9-ball. And honest to God, I sat there and I watched this match for 4 hours. After 3.5 hours, I said to Rich, I says, look, if this guy gets even with you, just quit. I'm going to play him. I was biting at the bit to play. After 4 hours of watching him this kid got even with him every single time. Rich would get up 2-3 games, that kid would win it back. I was dying to play. So Rich quits him. In a half an hour, I busted him. He sent his guy out to go get more money. He came back in 10 minutes, and I busted him again. I didn't miss a ball. It was one of the best sessions of pool I ever played in my life. So I ended up beating him out of $460. Big score back then.
Sure.
Yeah, huge. And we were all happy. And after the match was over, Whitey looked at me, the owner of the room. He was an old guy. He had been around. He'd seen all the best players. And he looked at me and he said, that's the best 9-ball I've ever seen.
Well, that's nice.
Which is a huge compliment to me. I knew I played good, you know, but I didn't realize it was that good.
Boy, when they're rolling like that, it feels like it should be that way all the time.
Yeah, right?
It does.
I know. Go figure.
How about Town Fair down, what is that, Stratford, Bridgeport?
Town Fair, yeah, that was upstairs above
Second
the
floor.
bowling alley.
Yep.
That was a nice little action spot.
I used to go in there also, yeah.
Yeah. They had some players down there. My best memory of that place was, oh, this is a good one. I'm playing the house man, Black Bob,
Yeah.
and I'm playing good. And I'm cleaning this guy out. Matter of fact, I cleaned him out. He went and cleaned out the register. I cleaned him out again. I think I ended up winning about $900 or whatever. But the best part of the story is there was a cop that had come in the pool room that day. And he was sitting down over in the corner. And he was, every time I looked up, he was staring at me. And, you know, this is back in the day. I was a little kid. I was doing things, you know, like I was snorting a little stuff and, you know, smoking a little weed. And so I was steaming mad at the guy because every time I looked up, he was looking at me. So I go into the bathroom and I take a whack. And I had a little bit left. I threw it in the hallway. I just got rid of it, you know, because I knew I was going in on this cop. I go back in the room, I says to him, what are you staring at me for? I didn't realize, but I was all paranoid. I says, what are you, gay or something?
Great.
And the cop looking at me, he says, I was just watching you play pool, that's all.
Didn't mean nothing, mister. That's funny. One day a while back, right here at Shooters, a group of young Spanish guys came in. You'll probably remember they were having some fun out by the arcade area, making a lot of racket out there, wailing on the punching bag machine. Mm-hmm. So I said, come on, let's walk out there and have a look. I figured if we can get a little bit of action, this is like the easiest money we could make, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we went out there and checking out the scores. The guy was hitting, that one guy was hitting it pretty good. He was in the mid 800s, I think, if I recall correctly. And I still figured, you know, we got the best of it if I can get him to go.
I know you're going to say.
Well, you were there. So
it is funny.
We went ahead and we were able to get a $20 action with the guy. One shot, who could hit it the hardest? And you're getting limber, you're stretching, you're getting everything, you're cracking your knuckles. And then it reminded me of one of those like Popeye commercials, cartoons with Pluto.
This is one of the most delicate shots I've ever taken in my life.
And he swings from his shoelaces, and I mean, he winds up and he swings at this thing, and he misses the bat He just glances it and he gets a 1. I swear to God, a 1 registered. A big
one.
red 1.
It didn't register
I
a
didn't
1.
know you could ever do
I didn't.
that.
It's not possible.
And he got a 1 for my money. That's what he got. Oh, and that wasn't the worst of it because I figured, well, errant throw, he'll be able to get it back. But he threw his back out at the same time. I just wanted to just make that commentary.
I'm just going to say one thing. I ended up hitting 888 on that same game.
Yeah, but he hit an 889.
Yeah, right.
I know we didn't walk out winners for that one. Anyways, that was fun. What would you consider the best pool room you've been in?
The best room.
Yeah, and it could be for anything. It could be for action. It could be for decor. Just enjoyment.
I always enjoyed going to Snookers.
Up in Rhode Island.
Yeah, there's just something about the room. It has history to it, and a lot of good players up on the wall.
Plus, you made it onto the wall.
I did
right?
make it onto the
They
wall.
inducted you into the new
2014.
Good for you.
They ran out of people, They started looking for bums like me, anybody, anything. Hey, you know anybody? Hey, you know somebody we could give this to?
They were strengthened. Well, so if you think that that's the best room, what do you think would be the worst room?
Oh, I don't know. The worst room. The worst room. For tables, maybe East Hartford Classic Billiards. I don't know. Those tables are like Gandys. I never liked them.
Oh, that's what they had, a room full of Gandys?
I think so, if I remember right. I used to go there just because Ray Gilbo played there, and he was a good player.
Oh, yeah, he was.
I went to play him.
So I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question. In fact, I do know it. But I'll ask for everybody's enjoyment. What is your equipment preference as far as what cues you use? What type are you preferring?
I'm an old school guy. I like steel joints. I can play with an ivory jointed cue, but I've been playing with a Gus Sambodi steel jointed cue my whole life, basically since the summer of '81. And I still have the cue with me today.
That's been your cue of choice?
It's
I know
that
you-
cue, me and that cue have had a love affair since 1981.
Yeah. So that would be your all-time favorite.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
stick may go to my grave with me.
I know you had a couple of close second Balabushkas as well.
I've had so many good cues,
Yeah.
I don't know where to start.
But it's old steel jointed, usually 4 ebony points, right, in a steel joint.
Yeah, leather wrap, 19.3 ounces, 58 inches long,
Yep.
13 millimeter shaft. The tip has to be tapered in and very low,
Ivory ferrule.
ivory ferrule.
Gotcha. Have you ever had occasion to play an opponent who felt compelled to wear a tinfoil hat in order to block out some of the negativity?
Now that you bring that to my attention, I actually have a picture on my phone of a guy that I played that he went to the bathroom one day because he was being bothered by somebody in the pool room. I don't know if it was me. It could have been me. But he went in there and he came out and he had a tinfoil hat on.
Wow.
So that was like to repel all the negativity in the universe or whatever it was. I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but it was something along those lines.
If I recall correctly, there was nothing in the rule books that said you couldn't wear one, right?
Oh, by the way, yeah, that was you.
Moving right along. Bruce, who would you consider the best pool players that came out of Connecticut?
For me, it's Larry. It's Larry Liscotti.
No, he's number one for sure. I
I heard about Eddie Kelly, who was from Waterbury area.
Champagne Eddie, yeah.
I never saw him play.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did ask Larry about him one day, and
Yeah.
Larry said, the guy's a good player. He said, who gets the money? Of course, Larry said, I get the money.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
But for me, it's always been Larry because not only was he technically a good player, but the guy, he didn't have a job. That's what he did for a living. You know how hard that is? To be on the road and have to make a score every day? Because, it costs you on somewhere around 100, 150 a day.
Yeah.
Just to, you'd be on the road. You know, you got to have gas money. You got to have money for a room. You got to have money to eat. He did that for 25 years.
Yeah, and according to all the intel on Larry, he was all in both ways.
Yeah.
You know, he could win a ton of money, and he could be flat out busted.
I've seen Larry
An
playing
hour
pool.
later.
I've seen Larry playing pool in an action game and have at least 10 bets going with other guys in the room on the game that he was playing. Plus, he may have side action on a football game or a basketball game going on at the same time. He had it all going on. And he kept it all straight in his head. And the funny thing about Larry, people actually enjoyed losing to Larry.
Well,
I
that's
can't
it.
tell you how many times I've seen people go up to him and shake his hand after they beat him, after he beat him.
I've only met one other guy, honestly, that has that ability, and I think that's Danny Basovich, Kid Delicious.
Well, he's got a personality.
He can clean you out and make you feel just terrific about playing him, you know?
Well, there's a certain
Larry
intelligence
did it
that goes along with that.
Yeah. Yeah, we could all take a cue from those guys. It's an art. It really is.
Absolutely. It's an art which you don't see much nowadays. Things have changed. The landscape of pool has changed.
Well, you know, we talk about this a lot too. What we don't find that much anymore is characters.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, everybody's a little robotic nowadays, and if you look at what's going on with the European and the Asian players, I mean, it's all very straight-laced business.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
a robot.
uniforms and you know, where's the Keith McCready's and the Louis Roberts?
The colorful guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of miss that side of it, to be honest with you.
Oh, I absolutely missed that.
In fact, here's another one. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him in Connecticut. He left here at a relatively early age, but he was quite a player. Was Donnie Edwards? They called him the Water Dog.
Water dog, yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever have any run-ins with him? Did you play him ever? Or
I
no?
never personally never played.
Yeah.
Kenny played him one day
Yeah.
and destroyed him.
Yeah.
But you know, Water Dog, he was before my time.
Yeah.
By the time I had ever met him, his game had gone way down.
Yeah, he ended up getting in some trouble, and
He
I
had
know
a
that
serious-
his early days. He was. I think they used to call them crack babies. You know, his mom unfortunately was addicted. And
Well, he had
so he grew
an
up like
addiction
that.
problem also.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he ended up with his own issues as well.
Yeah. He's one of those guys you hear when he was high, you know, he'd shoot the lights out.
Yeah.
You couldn't beat him.
Get the old mixture right. Yeah. But then
Like Johnny
then
Vivas.
they flame
Like
out.
Johnny Vivas back in the day, you know?
Oh yes, that's another. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another guy we should all be proud of here in Connecticut, of course, is Jeremy Sassi. He was for sure within the top five rotation players in the country, you know, a few years back. So he's had a strong game, and he's a high quality person.
Yeah, Jeremy's been around for quite a while. He was just a young kid.
Yeah.
When I knew him back in the day, like when Bristol Billiards was open back then, and he was starting to play good, you know. But he wanted to be a good player, you know, and he put the time in.
Yeah.
He put the time and effort in, and he made something of himself, you know.
He certainly did.
Unlike me, I always kept a job because I knew that.
Yeah. Oh, another one.
I knew.
Another one. Well, it was probably a very smart move. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have a game that you could play at a high level, and you made a living as well on the side. So,
On the side, yeah.
you know, all the people we see who are our heroes. We watch Shane, and we watch guys like Bustamante and Orcolo. These guys are playing at such a high level, but this is all they do, day in, day out, 8-10 hours a day on the pool table. You know. It makes you feel better about your game when you realize you got a separate career running alongside of that.
Well, I got to tell you, that's one thing that I'm most proud of, as far as my pool playing career goes. That I always had a steady job. I mean, I don't care if I was in Bridgeport till 4 o'clock in the morning, I would have to drive home an hour and get up at 6:30 and go to work. And I did.
Got to answer the bell.
I did. I went to work, and I'm glad I did.
Well, you obviously have a lot of passion for the game. It seems like us guys, we're lifers, right? We can't get out of it. But what is it specifically about the game that keeps you coming back through the door?
It's like pool can get into your bloodstream, and just it's a part of you. It's a part of your identity. It's who you are. If you're really a pool player, there's nothing more that you want to do. There's nothing that you would rather do more than shoot the lights out on the pool table. You know, that's as good as it gets.
Beautiful feeling. Yeah, it is.
That's as good as it gets for a pool player. Just get up there and shoot the lights out and beat your man.
Do you have any regrets regarding pool?
Yeah, of course I do. I had a few moments along the way, you know, like all the sticks that I broke when I was a teenager. I regret that.
Did you break sticks?
Ask anybody, they'll tell you.
I know, I've heard.
However, I'll say it again, I've had my playing cue since 1981.
That one survived.
That survived.
That should be a commercial for this.
But yet the legend keeps getting bigger and bigger on how I broke so many cues.
You broke.
Which I don't mind, you know, whatever. Everybody has fun with it.
You broke
at my expense, but that's all right.
You broke some expensive ones.
I did.
I'll say. I've heard there were people scrambling on the floor picking up pieces, trying to salvage what might have got broke.
Look, I got rid of them for a reason. They needed to go. You understand?
Understood. They betrayed you.
That's right.
They betrayed
Time
you.
to go.
They weren't worthy. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
You know, when I think about pool, it was always a safe place for me to go, to the pool room. Like when I was going through, let's say, emotional distress or whatever, I had things going on in my life, I wasn't having fun with that. I could always go to the pool room and just forget everything and immerse myself in the game.
Yeah.
And that was really good for me. I needed that more than anything. I mean, I could just block everything out and play pool. That's when I played my best pool. So it worked for me in that way.
Well, very good. Well,
And I got to say, all my accomplishments in pool don't really mean much to me, but the friends that I made mean an awful lot to me. Like Bobby we've been best friends since 81. It's over 40 years. And we still call each other, you know. If there's a game coming to town or we hear about something that happened, you know,
You get excited.
I'm either calling him or he's calling me, you know.
You get excited. I know how that goes.
Yeah, once it's in your blood, that's it. You're hooked.
And you make lifetime.
You're hooked for
friends.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Part of the DNA.
it is.
Thank you for taking the time to sit down and do this interview. Really appreciate
Well,
it.
Chicken, I always love having a few moments with you.
Yeah, I know you do. Take
I
care,
know.
man. Likewise.
Thank you.
Bye.